чтобы они доехали.
There is a human story. This is Our World.
It's a living culture.
A series of documentary films that reveal the human drama at the heart of global events.
Життя триває, у нас 2 дітей.
Our World. Watch on BBC iPlayer.
Oil prices jump after OPEC Plus shocks markets by cutting oil output. Saudi Arabia says the cuts are to support stability. Factory output in Asia is hit by weakening demand, but what does it mean for the economic recovery of the region? And we'll speak to the man who made the world's first ever mobile phone call 50 years ago today. Hello, very warm welcome to World Business Report. I'm Ben Thompson, and we're going to start with that surge in oil prices, and that's after the world's largest exporters announced a surprise cut in production. Saudi Arabia and other OPEC Plus oil producers said that they would cut output by 1.1 million barrels a day. Saudi Arabia has said that the move is aimed at stabilising the market. So let's take a look at what oil prices are currently doing. You see there, you get a sense that rise up sharply, $83 for Brent, $79.50 for US light. It is the second time that the cartel has slashed production. The group also did so in October of last year. It cut output then by 2 million barrels per day. So let's get some detail with Spencer Welsh, who's an oil analyst at S&P Global. Spencer, good to have you with us. We said there a surprise cut in production. We've been getting used to prices falling as the nervousness around the world economy continues. What does this tell us about what OPEC is thinking?
Hi, good to speak to you. It shows that they are not happy with the price of oil at the moment. They would like the price of oil to be higher than it is. The price is between $70 and $80 per barrel. We believe they would like it certainly above 80, maybe even above 90.
If we look around the world where demand and consumption is growing, there is a lot of nervousness. I've touched on it. As the world faces an economic slowdown, demand traditionally for oil would fall. And is there a sense, therefore, that OPEC is nervous that they will lose money if the world begins to slow?
I think maybe just to step back slightly. So the reality of how much they cut is still a big question. Even before this, OPEC have previously announced cuts of 2.5 million barrels per day. That started in November last year, and then Russia added in another 500,000 barrels. But the reality is the actual physical cut has been about 20% of that, about 500,000 barrels per day. So we don't expect all of this newly announced 1.1 million cut to become a reality, but it certainly indicates an intention. And yes, as you said, it indicates a nervousness about the markets. We've had the banking wobbles, which have had a knock-on on oil prices, and OPEC are continuing their previous message that they'd like to see prices higher than they are at present.
And of course, day-to-day moves in, global oil prices don't really affect the price we pay at the pump. There's a long-term view. But I suppose the issue is if they stay at these persistently high prices, that starts to have an effect on the economy too, doesn't it? Because all of us end up paying more.
Yes, we do. It certainly the higher prices has an impact on oil demand. But to be honest, it's a relatively small impact on oil demand, because most oil consumption, we don't tend to have a choice in terms of we can't switch to another product, or not easily. So therefore, our decision is how far do we drive, how far do we fly. But yes, there is a concern from OPEC Plus about oil demand, about whether there might be a recession or a global downturn, and therefore they would like to see the price a bit higher.
Spencer, as always, good to talk to you. Thanks very much. Spencer Welsh, oil analyst at S&P Global. Now staying with that theme of a slowdown, factory activity in Asia, it weakened last month due to a drop in demand from around the world. New data that's out today shows that the export-reliant Japan and South Korean markets both saw activity in manufacturing shrink. Growth stalled pretty much altogether in China. Well, this highlights the challenge that now faces countries like China as authorities try to keep inflation in check, as well as dealing with weakening global economic momentum. Our Asia Business reporter is Katie Silver.
China's manufacturing sector is struggling to get back on track. Data out today shows that slowing global demand is hitting demand for goods from China, and that is hitting its ability to recover from 3 years of strict zero-COVID policy. This is bad news for a country that relies on its manufacturing sector. It accounts for about a third of the economy. The Caixin S&P PMI fell to exactly 50 in March. Anything above 50 indicates expansion, while below is contraction. This was down from 51.6 the month prior, and far lower than what many analysts had expected. Experts say this means that China's recovery needs to come not from the manufacturing sector, but from the services sector, which was hit hard during COVID. Going forward, China needs people in China to spend to counter that drop in demand from other countries. Boosting domestic consumption is a big goal of China's new premier, Li Qiang. It seems the new leadership is likely to be more pro-business. Last week, we heard from Premier Li Qiang vowing to support consumption and investment. And the central bank has also been making moves to try and make it easier for banks to lend out money as well. It's all about trying to get people to go out and spend.
Katie Silver there in Singapore. Now, Swiss prosecutors have opened an inquiry into UBS of its takeover of its banking rival Credit Suisse. The probe aims to look into any potential breaches of the country's criminal law by those involved in that emergency merger. Well, the takeover in March was arranged by the Swiss government to head off a potential financial market meltdown following the collapse of 2 US banks. Well, Fiona Cincotta is a financial market analyst at City Index.
And I think Switzerland is going to be very keen to protect its reputation and to be looking into these details to make sure that everything was as it should have been. In the fact that the deal was done so quickly. So, any wrongdoings by banking officials, by regulators, by the government officials, that's what they're going to be looking for. Just anything that suggests that this deal isn't perhaps as it should be. I mean, we mustn't forget, though, at the end of the day, this deal was done extremely quickly, and it was done at a time where there were a lot of concerns whether the bank would actually survive another few days or not. But that doesn't mean that things shouldn't be done properly. So I think that's what they just want to make sure.
Yeah, lots of scrutiny of that emergency merger that was pushed through. Lots of job losses also announced as a result. But as we said, they're designed to try and stabilise financial markets and indeed the wider economy after the collapse of those 2 US banks. Now, elsewhere, your smartphone is part of your everyday life. But have you ever wondered when the first mobile phone call was made? Well, it took place exactly 50 years ago. By this man. Our tech editor Zoe Kleiman spoke with him. He made that historic call.
Mobile phones. We love them. The UN estimates 3/4 of the world's population owns a mobile phone, and there are more mobiles than people in the United Kingdom, according to the industry's trade body. This man helped make it all happen. Marty Cooper was an engineer at Motorola. On the 3rd of April 1973, on a street corner in New York, he made the world's first public mobile phone call to a competitor at a rival company.
I was on 6th Avenue demonstrating this cell phone. I took out my phone book. That gives you an idea what primitive times these were. And I called my counterpart in the Bell system, a fellow named Joel. Well, I dialed his number, and amazingly, he answered. And I said, Joel, I'm calling you a cell phone, but a real cell phone, a personal, handheld, portable cell phone. Silence on the other end of the line. I think he was gritting his teeth.
Bell had been focusing on developing a car phone, and Marty wasn't impressed.
Is this Mrs. P?
We had been trapped in our homes and offices by this copper wire for over 100 years, and now they were going to trap us in our cars, and we at Motorola just didn't believe that was the way to go.
Goodbye.
The way the first call was made hasn't really changed. The phone converts your voice into an electric signal, which then modulates a radio wave. The radio wave goes to a mast. The mast sends your voice to the person you're calling, and by reversing the process, that person can hear you speak. Except there weren't many masks around in 1973, and mobile phones are now unrecognisable from the first model.
Well, there's some real icons from the mobile phone kind of timeline here.
Ben Wood knows all about the history of mobile phones. He has his own collection.
So here we have really a true icon, the Motorola Dynatac 8000X, the first truly hand-portable mobile phone. Conceived in 1973 when the first phone call was made on a prototype of this, launched eventually in 1984. And that device cost about $4,000 at the time, which would be about £9,500 today.
£9,000. And it's pretty heavy again. What's the battery life like, dare I ask?
The battery life on that was about 30 minutes. It would take about 10 hours to charge. Had a standby of around a similar time as well.
Wow.
Marty Cooper, the pioneer of the mobile phone, isn't a fan of current designs.
I think today's phone is suboptimal. It's really not a very good phone in many respects. Now just think about it. You take a piece of plastic and glass and put it that's flat, and you put it against the curved head. You hold your hand in an uncomfortable position.
So what does Marty think about the future of phones?
We are still at the very beginning of the cell phone revolution. We are going to eliminate poverty because we are becoming more productive because of the cell phone. I just mentioned we're going to eliminate disease. Our educational system is going to be revolutionized. I think all of these things are potentials that the cell phone is going to not do it by itself, but it will be an essential part of this great future.
Zoe Kleinman, BBC News.
What an incredible story, but I love that it took 10 hours to charge and you got 30 minutes of use out of those first mobile phones. And also the fact that Marty's first call, that historic first call, was a call to his rival to remind him that he'd beaten him in that race to develop that cell phone. So congratulations to him 50 years ago. Let's bring you up to date with some of the other business stories this hour. The struggling cinema chain Cineworld has said it will raise new funding as it's dropped plans to sell its businesses in the US, UK and Ireland after failing to find a buyer. The company saw its share price fall by nearly 30% after announcing it would terminate the move. At the same time, Cineworld said it had struck a deal with its lenders to restructure its substantial debt and exit bankruptcy. And Tesla has delivered a record number of vehicles in the first financial quarter after slashing prices. The EV company saw its sales rise by 36% after two price cuts aimed at boosting demand. The discounts came at a time when consumers face soaring inflation and higher interest rates, but also unprecedented choice in the market for electric vehicles. Let's show you the numbers. We showed you a little earlier, didn't we, what Brent crude was doing, and those were not the numbers. These are the numbers. The FTSE 100, as you can see, actually bouncing back a little higher than expected. There is still a lot of nervousness, of course, about a global slowdown, but that's the number we're keeping an eye on today. As you see, 5% higher on the day, taking Brent now to nearly $84 a barrel after that cut from OPEC+. We'll keep an eye on that, much more on the website, bbc.com/business. See you very soon. Bye-bye.
The latest way to improve safety for people out partying in Bath. The Safe Bus will be parked up every Friday and Saturday night outside Bath Abbey.
At the end of the bus we have this sort of private area, and this is obviously for people to come if they need their own private space, need some private medical treatment.
And then we've got kitchen.
Yeah, so it's kind of like the kitchen area. We've got everything that you would probably need if you wanted to keep warm and have a nice drink, tea, coffee facilities, water. Underneath here we've got sick bowls, emergency blankets, flip-flops, which I've been told by the night pastors are really popular, spare clothing, phone chargers. There will always be a paramedic. There will be a security marshal in the city with our night marshals, and then it'll be a team of volunteers. It'll be people who need first aid and who need the paramedic and that support.
Pressure on emergency services is known to be higher at weekends.
And if you can deal with the situation like on the ground where it's happened, then people don't have to take themselves up to A&E.
The idea's already been proven elsewhere, and venues throughout Bath had asked for their own bus. Vulnerable, tipsy, or maybe even lost, this bus is one that will always have a seat for you.
Consider us your official backstage pass to Eurovision 2023.
You never know what's going to happen. That is addictive.
How did one of the biggest robberies in history help to create one of Britain's richest and most notorious gangsters?
I'm curious about how you think people perceive you.
As a danger, as a risk, as a potential risk. It was a story. It was the big story.
There's always more to the story with our podcasts. Listen on BBC Sounds.
You're live with BBC News. Now it's sport time, and for a full roundup from the BBC Sports Centre, here is Will Perry. Hi, Will.
Hello, Ben. Let's start with the football news because Chelsea's search for a new manager is underway, having sacked Graham Potter after less than 7 months in charge. Chelsea will collaborate with the club to facilitate a smooth transition. Bruno Saltor, who worked with Potter at Brighton, takes over as interim head coach.
They gave him the time. The time is things that every manager wants. Me, even as an ex-player, I wanted time, but they never give you time. And you know that he knew that too, taking that job. He knew that. Come on, guys. We know where he was in, but it was a heated situation. You could see it at his face. The job was starting to bite at him.
Leicester also looking for a new manager after Brendan Rodgers was relieved of his duties over the weekend after they lost 2-1 away at Crystal Palace and slipped to second bottom in the Premier League. Rodgers helped Leicester lift the FA Cup for the first time in their history. That was back in 2021. A club statement says they will always be grateful to him, but they felt compelled to take alternative action to avoid relegation. There's a big game at both ends of the Premier League table later. Tottenham go to Everton in what is their first match since Antonio Conte's departure. Their acting head coach, Christian Stellini, will be in the dugout at Goodison Park. A Spurs win would take them up to third in the table. As for Everton, avoid defeat and they could move out of the relegation zone. Stellini insists that Tottenham aren't in crisis.
Nothing changed. In my opinion, nothing has to change. We have to... I know very well the player. And if you have some matters, we have to be compact, and we have to stick together, and go ahead and continue and move on and play the match.
There's a good team there. I know there's a bit of noise there and varying things going on, it seems, but at the end of the day, they've still got a good group of players there, and we've got to be ready for that. I don't think there might be radical change. I doubt it. We'll have to wait and see. But you know, the good thing with the Premier League and the players that I've got here, they've experienced a lot during this season and other seasons for some of them, coming across different tactical situations, different playing styles, etc., etc. So you've got to be adaptable and flexible. So we will be.
Australian Grand Prix organisers have promised to investigate after fans invaded the track before Sunday's race had officially finished. Footage showed a large group squeezing through barriers and climbing fences just metres from speeding cars. The sports governing body, the FIA, said the incident was a serious breach of the sporting code. Corey Connors has won the final PGA Tour event before this week's Masters at Augusta. The Texas Open was his second Tour victory after also winning this event in 2019. The Canadian finished on 15 under par in San Antonio with rookie Sam Stevens 1 stroke behind. Connors said he enjoyed the challenge of winning once again in Texas.
It was a battle out here for sure. The conditions were not easy. Struck the ball really well, gave myself a lot of looks and kept things under control, and it was definitely a battle but a lot of fun. I can't believe I got my second win here.
A group of players from the Saudi-funded Live Golf Tour will attend the Masters this week. Brooks Koepka among the 18 who will play at that tournament. The American goes into it having become the first player to win multiple Live tournaments after victory at the event in Florida over the weekend. And Ruoning Yin became only the second Chinese winner in LPGA Tour history on Sunday, holding off England's Georgia Hall at the LA Open. Yin finished 15 under par for a narrow victory after Hall missed a birdie to force a playoff. Ben, that's all the sport for now. More from us later.
Well, thanks very much. We'll see you then. And we're going to actually stay with sport because after hundreds of grassroots football referees in England told the BBC they feared for their own safety on the pitch, a world-first trial was launched allowing amateur referees to wear body cams. Around 100 people have used the equipment in the first 3 months of the scheme, and if it proves successful, the trial will be expanded. Our sports reporter Jane Dougal has been to see how it works.
afternoon, lads. So obviously I've got the body camera on today. So what will happen if I need to switch this camera on, I will announce I'm activating the camera.
In the first of its kind in the world, Sophie Wood is one of 100 grassroots referees taking part in a body cam technology trial.